It's Tuesday, 12:30, and I'm so amazed and so excited that we've got another fabulous show lined up for you on the Mindset Michele TV show. My special guest today is the magical, amazing Steve Hui. Now, Steve is a specialist in the area of reward points and credit card points, and using those points and getting the most value out of them that you possibly can. In fact, he's known as the Points Whisperer. And Steve also has this incredible business that we'll hear more about called I Fly Flat. Now, last night when I was doing a bit of rehearsal, I kept saying, I fly fat. So for those of you out there that have put on a few kilos post-COVID, you can think of it as I fly fat or I fly flat.
Yeah.
But with that introduction, I'd love for Steve, if you want to say hello and share a little bit more about yourself with everyone.
Thanks very much, Michele. Michele, you look fabulous as well with that new height. Cool, thank you. Well, actually, I fly fat in a way. It's apt because when you're flying first in business class, you have so much food fed to you that and drinks fed that you sort of get off the plane, you go, I must have gained a couple of kilos just on that flight alone, because you got the lounge, you got food. It's just very hard to say no to free, delicious food.
It is premium food, isn't it?
Premium
it's
food, yeah.
You know, beautiful food as well as being lots of it.
Served to you on demand, on repeat as well. But my name is Steve Hui. So people call me the Points Whisperer, mainly because I love points and I love so much about points. But my background is actually accounting. So I'm a CPA qualified accountant, and I did accounting for about 18 years before starting I Fly Flat. And it's really interesting because like frequent flyer points and credit card points are just numbers. Like they're sort of like just numbers on a spreadsheet. But apart from just numbers on a spreadsheet, you can actually do something amazing with them, which is to swap them for travel. So I got hooked on frequent flyer points about 10 years ago after I flew business class for the first time. And I think it's very hard to forget that very first trip on business class when they greet you by name, they take your jacket, they ask you what time do you want your food served. And I thought, what time? Just whatever time you guys get it cooked? No, they say, no, we'll cook it when you want it. So that was just never had that before. You know, when you fly economy, you get served food whether you like it or not, and you eat it and you finish it, and then you can go to the toilet after that because you can't go to the toilet when your guy next to you has got food because you can't get out. So yes, I got hooked on business class, and I thought, well, how can I use these frequent flyer points to my advantage? So I pretty made it my life's work in a way to study frequent flyer points. So that's a little bit about my background. So lucky enough, I'm an accountant. I understand numbers, but travel is really the outcome of the numbers that go into it.
And I was interested in, because I'm sure that there's something there in the background where, you know, making the best use of a situation, because really when I think about it, that's what you've done. You've taken the boring old points and the boring old numbers and you've gone, well, actually, this is a way that I can use them. And I'm sure that when you look back on your life and your history, that there's been some incredible opportunities, like even becoming an accountant and that. Do you want to share with people a little bit more about your journey of how you became you?
Yeah, so I've always liked value and then finding a deal. So I'm still very much now. I'm always like to get something for cheaper, and I always think about there's many ways to achieve the same outcome. So in my mind, just like when you're driving to work or you're going places, I'm always thinking, is there another way I can get to my destination? Maybe sometimes by taking this inside lane traffic seems to move faster, and you don't know if there's something blocking ahead, but then you realize that it's a clear way. And for example, you drive along a road, the left lane's a clear way, but why is that the most freest lane? Why do everyone stick in the middle lane, the right lane? Because everyone is worried that there will be a car stuck on the left lane. But if it's a clear way, and it's been clear way for more than an hour, chances are any car will be cleared by then. So that's the type of thing I'm always thinking about. Is there a different way of doing something that is not really have much risk involved, but no one else seems to do? And it can't very hard to explain why they don't do it, except that maybe they haven't really thought about it. So I think that's one way to explain how my brain works. It's like, yeah, there's a 3-lane road, clear way, but why don't people take it? So I take that lane, and you find out that you pass a lot of cars very quickly, and you get to work very quickly, and you're settled. So that's sort of like probably in a nutshell.
Did that drive your mum wild when you were a kid? She'd say, go and do it this way, but you'd look at it and go, well, actually, I want to do it this way, because in your brain, you're already going, oh, that's an easier way to do it. But you had to then kind of retro explain it to your mum.
Probably, I think in my mind, it was probably the only way to do it. So maybe I think they can drive people wild. But obviously, I think the first time I always do the prescribed way. But then once left to on my own devices, I always find a better way of doing things. And I guess, but it's always very subjective, because a better way in your mind might not be a better way in someone else's mind. So if someone can just leave me and get to the outcome, then they're not disturbed on how I got there. So I always like that challenge, because I always think there's a better way or a different way of achieving the same outcome. And I guess what Freaking Life wants is a bit like that.
And I like how you make that distinction, because it could be a different way, but it's not necessarily a better way. But also it may be just that it's a better way for you, but not for somebody else.
Yeah.
So that leads nicely on to, what do you define as success for you?
Yeah, I think success is ultimately having time and freedom to do whatever you want to do for as long as you want to do it for. So, and I think that's everyone's a bit hard to explain, but the idea of being able to do something for as long as you want to, then you can change is the magic. It means that could be, you could be going for a swim, but if you only want to swim for 15 minutes and you had to pay an entry fee to go to the pool, well, that's a meaning of success, that you could just go for 15 minutes, have to swim, because that's as long as you wanted to swim for, and then you could leave, and not having the burden of going, oh, I paid an entry fee, I should stay for 1 or 2 or 3 hours to get the most of it. So I think that's my definition of success, is do something as long as that you want to do for as long as you want to, and then you can switch and do something else.
I hear that a lot with entrepreneur types, and it makes sense that it's that freedom and the flexibility around the freedom. So everybody has things that you may have to do in life, like put out the garbage bins and life stuff. But it's the flexibility around, well, I have to do it before I drive off to work in the morning, or I can do it, after I've had my morning cup of tea and my meetings, and then I can do it before the bin men arrive. That sort of flexibility and that freedom, yeah.
Yeah, but also that contrast, because something amazing can only be contrast to something that's not so amazing as well. So, because otherwise, if you're just doing amazing things all the time, then each of the amazing things don't seem that amazing, because the incremental wildness is not as high. So sometimes you sort of have to force yourself to do some boring things to know that the other stuff is definitely not
amazing. Yeah. I had friends many years ago that lived in a home in Hawaii, right, literally on the ocean's edge, with the infinity pool, you name it, they had it. And I remember going there, and it was exactly that. To them, it was just like home. So they didn't notice all the things that me from Australia were going, oh my God, this is like, off of a TV screen. And it was just home to them. So I agree. You need that balance in life between those two elements to really appreciate, I think, being in first class and knowing that is like first class and business class are like the top of the range, and then the other elements, you know, flying economy or you know, your smaller flights between parts of the state.
That's right.
You know, you're not necessarily always going to have that higher standard.
Yeah. And also sometimes like in terms of travel, where some people like to travel for many months, like they say like a 3-month block, whereas I prefer to travel maybe for 1 or 2 weeks, then come back and then go again, because you have that contrast of being away, then coming back to work in your normal life, then going away again, versus every week you're just comparing destination A to destination B to C. So therefore the high is not as high when compared to each one. But when you're comparing work to travel each time, then you got the highs and lows flicking past, and I find that that's much more enjoyable from my perspective.
I agree. I remember in Italy especially going, oh, this is another beautiful, amazing church. And, you know, it was medieval or something. And it was incredible if I compare it to life here and looking around now in Australia. But at the time, there was just so many of them that they started to all blur.
Yes, that's right. So then you lose the seeing all the amazing details because you're comparing to this church compared to one that you saw a few days or a few weeks ago. And they're not that amazing when compared to each other than compared to no church at all.
Exactly. And also the difference in histories. So in that sense, then, we look each week at different people have different angles around what they think leads to a mindset of success. What do you think leads to that freedom, that flexibility, and being able to appreciate, you know, the beautiful church as well as the beautiful, you know, local Woolworths or something?
Yeah.
That contrast and that life. What are the 3 tips that you would give to people?
Yeah, I really love this question because when we talk about mindset, this is really so personal to each person, because the same thing across multiple people, you will get different answers. And I think it's something that you consciously need to think about, that this is, it's a bit like, I'm not sure if you're tricking yourself, but you're basically telling yourself that this is good and something to be grateful for in order to switch your mind to that thing. So one of the things is I think in terms of travel, it's about taking the opportunity to travel when the time comes. So especially in group travel. So I remember times in university where I would not go on a group trip because either to save money or because there's something else to do. But then the whole group will come back and you hear about that story for years and years, and you just realize, man, I should just went. But the problem is that you can never recreate the opportunity once again, because even though at the time the group is happy to gather again and go for another trip, circumstances change, people get new jobs, people get new partners, or people have children, and that opportunity never ever comes again, even though the intent was there. So one of the things I've always sort of even learned from the university days is, if an opportunity to go for a group trip exists, you got to go, because otherwise you just hear about it and you were not part of it. And that's something that will, that's part of the memories that you have when you're living life, travel memories that you can always recall, because at any time you can just recall and go, oh, that trip, I remember what we did there and the food we ate. So you can always recall that moment, even if just waiting for the bus stop. You know, if you're a little bit bored, you can think about the amazing trip and experience that you had somewhere in the world.
I really like that element of, you know, seize the day, seize the moment. COVID, other things that keep happening really keep reinforcing that in life now. The thing is to keep seizing those moments and creating those opportunities to just have those experiences and those memories. That's a beautiful point there, Steve.
There's something you can always draw into, and it's sort of free from that point onwards, because that memory is in your mind and you can draw upon that any time. You don't have to pay royalties to anyone. They are your memories. The second one I have is curiosity. It's only something I've only learned as I got older. And there's some things in the past might have been a bit frustrating, So you think, oh, why would people do this, or why would that happen? But I guess as I got older, I realized that the world means that different people have different perspectives. And I think linking back to what I said at the start was that in my perspective, I'm doing things better. But really, in fact, I'm just doing things different. But so everyone's perspective is they believe what they're doing is right and is the best way, because no one knowingly does something that's a bit wacky. They believe is the right thing to do. So I think it's about being curious to switch that frustration to curiosity and have a think about, oh, why is that person doing it that way? So therefore, to avoid being frustrated, but also just to say, well, maybe there's a good reason to, or maybe there's a reason that you will never understand, but that's okay. It's just that if through that person's life experience, they believe that way is the best way.
And I love that curiosity, because you're so right. Unless you ask and you find out, you never actually understand why people do things in a certain way. I remember talking about travelling when I went to Graceland in Tennessee, Elvis Presley's home. And they have playing, it's a bit annoying, but they have playing over and over the song Walk a Mile in My Shoes.
Yeah.
And as you're walking around his home, that song is playing, and you get that sense of, you know, what would it have been like for Elvis walking around, living in this home and his life. And so I think you're very right, you know, that curiosity can really help you to understand more what might be a frustration or annoyance, so that you can reframe it. And it's great for the mindset to be able to reframe things.
Yeah, just rethinking in a different way, because otherwise you can get caught up in just spiral of frustration because people are doing things not the way that you would do it. But the things like you don't have all the facts, so you're only seeing a snippet of that entire task or that entire person. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And the third thing I would say is like there's so much things going on in the world that only focus on things that you can control and things that you could change. And although focusing on things that you can change is quite far-reaching, because there's lots of things that you can change or you can control, albeit at the start of doing something massive. But the way I say that is that also about just thinking forward rather than in the past, because the past is something you definitely cannot change or control. So if something you've said in the past or you've done, the future is something you can make a rectification for, but you can't think about, oh, maybe I should have said it a different way, something that you can't change the past for sure, but only focus on what you can change in the future. And that also means that some things are not under your remit to change. So things might be someone else's job. That's not sort of, in a way, it's not your problem. So you can't change it. So being annoyed about that is different. So that helped me get through.
I love that you know, the serenity prayer. That's what's talking about a little bit there. And also around, you know, recognizing what you can influence and change and what you can't in yourself, in others, and in the world around you. I think I also talk a lot with people around boundaries to do with what you can and can't change. And it's even internal boundaries around knowing that you may have always kind of responded or reacted in a certain way. And instead of, again, beating yourself up of, you know, every time I go to change lanes and there's a car that speeds up, it's like they press a button on, you know, button here.
They're watching you.
They know to press that button and it's going to go react. And instead of getting annoyed, you know, either laugh about the fact that button got pressed, or just, you know, accept that, you know, that happens and your button gets pressed. And I think driving is a really good example of that. It reminds me of that saying that was on Facebook ages ago about, you know, the day's going great, I'm doing really good, blah, 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 and now I have to get out of bed. You know, I feel like that sometimes, you know, my emotions are great, my energy is great, my this is great, everything's going great. But then I got in the car.
Yeah, the car's one of those weird things. It does get you a bit angry sometimes.
It does, and it's recognizing those boundaries and what you can and can't change. So, you know, a lot of it is kind of a primal kind of reaction to things, because it's the fear factor that comes up, and that is there for a good reason. So it's more, and what I do with myself now is I kind of notice it, and then when I notice it, I go, okay, that's what's going on. I'm going to tone it down and stop making insults to the car next to me that cut me off or whatever.
Yeah, because it's one of those funny things where we as humans are still very much wired up to have these instincts, which served as well, like in the olden days, medieval days, even before days, but now we still do them when we realize that actually we are actually completely safe. There's no risk of personal harm, but we still react to them. So therefore, it's really interesting when you pick that up and you go, well, I'm going to take control of this situation. I'm not just going to let they call it the lizard brain, just jump off. It's like, I'm above this. I can take control of this, and then I can steer myself away from what a natural. That's sort of quite fascinating, actually, when you see that happen in yourself.
It is, and when you were talking about having that curiosity rather than, you know, judging or stressing about what other people were doing as well, I think that's really important, because most things actually come back to kind of a fight or flight or a reaction at that primal level, even if people don't really realize that's what's going on or understand it. It's, you know, that person did something, I'm annoyed with them. But if you go, well, actually, it's actually because I have that automatic, you know, they press the button like.
Yes.
And so I can then manage where I go from here. I can stay in the annoyance, I can this and that. And I think the car's a really good example, because very soon after ranting and raving at another car that can't hear you and has disappeared by that point, you realise that the only person you're hurting is yourself with that energy being in that space, and then you can manage yourself back from there. And so I think you've raised some really good points, and that primal brain and the curiosity and all of that is just really important to remember when creating this mindset for success in what you're doing.
Yeah. All that stuff is very fascinating. I think the car one is a good one, because everyone's in their own cocoon. So everyone's got windows up, aircon on, music on, that in their own cocoon, and they really cannot hear you. So they
and like you were saying about getting frustrated, annoyed and distracted by what somebody else is doing, you can be doing whatever you want in your own cocoon, but they're not going to care less. They're you know, doing what they do, and that curiosity may be, well, actually they're speeding because they've just found out they've got a sick kid or something.
Yeah.
So you actually,
so many reasons.
Story.
Yeah. And many things people do, they're not about you. They're like literally, chances that they might not even know you're there. That's the interesting part.
And then that's why I always remember, and when I have this kind of conversation, think back to the Elvis's home and walking a mile in his shoes, because, you know, there are some people that aren't necessarily that nice out there in the world, but the majority aren't doing things to hurt you or hurt anybody else. And it really is just that they're in their own cocoon, whether it's in a car or in the office or wherever it might be. And they're just doing the things that they think they need to do to get through the day. But it can be so annoying to other people. And the thing is to think about it as cocoons, and you're in your cocoon, and have that curiosity then to go, well, what's going on for them? And nowadays with COVID, with this, with that, it could be a lot of different things.
Multiple layers. But that cocoon could have multiple layers as well. I think I like that visualization of that everyone's in there. Like get smart cocoon. They can't hear what you're doing.
The secret. What do they call it? The cone of silence.
Yeah, the cone of silence. Correct. Because everyone's got earphones on and stuff. You know, that is actually true these days.
It is. It's very true. it leads us on nicely to nowadays, but let's quickly, I'll have a look, see the comments. I can see here that there's a couple of people asking about, this all sounds great, Steve, and really on track with creating a great mindset for success. So what would you then maybe tell yourself, your younger self? What would you say to your younger self?
Oh, yeah, I really like this question, because I'll tell my younger self that people are, and I think very much linked to the conversation you just had, is people are too busy thinking about themselves to be thinking about you. So therefore, the things that they do that impact you or say to you or whatever, chances are they're definitely not consciously doing it. So when you're young, you think, oh, someone did this. What did they mean? Did I do this? Did I do that? Actually, now you realize that they did it with no regard to what you were thinking. They were just like seriously in their own cocoon. So I think that will be the most important advice I would give to my younger self, is to realize that everyone is too busy thinking about themselves. And when I've been thinking about themselves, it's like they're solving problems out in their head. They're organizing their day, they're organizing their week. They're probably not thinking about, I've got an email, how do I respond to that email? They're thinking about the problem solving. So that's when I mean that they're thinking about themselves. And then basically your life just happens to intersect. And then something happened and you go, wow, what did you do that for? Why did you say that for? The chances are they don't even know they've done it. And if they did find out, they'll be horrified that that was the outcome of what they did. So I think that will be my advice, is definitely not personal. Whatever's happening is being played out in someone else's mind, and they don't even know you're there. So that's, and if on off occasion they did do something deliberately, that is such a small chance. They might as well just regard it as winning the lotto. That's how small the chances are.
Well, and I think you raised a couple of really good points there around saying to your younger self, not to get caught up in why or how or whatever about what other people are doing, because they're actually following their own path. And in most situations and circumstances, you don't even exist on that path. The reason that they haven't even thought of you is that in their list of priorities, you haven't even made it to the list. It's the kids, the job, the car, the house, this, that. So with so much going on, you're not even on that list. And so if there is a disconnect or a discord in the connection, it's not deliberate, like you said. It's actually that what's gone on has led to a disconnect, but it's because you're both in your own cocoons or own little cones of silence, living life, and then when it's interacted. But you're right, when you're young, you actually take everything so personally and think it's all being done to you or about you. And
these days where I'm like, I wear this yesterday. I can't even remember what the hell I wore. How can someone else remember what you wore?
and there was another great expression about what other people think is none of my business. So all of that energy about, what will my friends think if I wear this or do this, what they think is none of your business.
Yeah, I like that. I like that as well. I think that helps solve a lot of angst in our society, and also it lets people just get on and do the stuff that they want to do without considering too much other things.
Getting caught up in it, yeah. Or getting caught up in this fabulous conversation today. So we're coming to the end. And so how can people contact you, Steve?
Oh, yeah, through LinkedIn. It's my favourite. So just Stephen Hui, StevenHui. And also through Instagram. I'm on that quite a bit. So that's iFlyFlat. So that's just at iFlyFlat. So those are the two platforms I'm on most.
And that's FLAT, not FAT.
That's right. I don't know where the other one goes.
I'll have to look up I Fly Fat later.
Yeah, I should make friends with them.
It could be an offshoot, You could do a deal with Jenny Craig or something, I Fly Fat.
True. Yeah, that's a winner.
Well, it's been such an amazing, wonderful time to share this time with you today. So thank you so much for being my guest today, Steve.
Thank you, Michele. I had a lot of fun.
Wonderful. And for everybody viewing and those viewing later on, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. And next week, we've got another fabulous guest that I'm really looking forward to talking with and finding out more about what creates that mindset for success. But until then, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.